May I invite Dr. Vernon to call on the next speaker?
Thank you, Ketan. And next speaker is Dr. Manas Panigrahi. He's the head of Department of Neurosurgery at the Krishna Institute of Medical Sciences, Hyderabad. And he's going to talk to us about prolactinoma and the role of surgery. Over to you, Manas.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Vernon. And I'd like to thank Professor Mishra for giving this opportunity to speak in this meeting in the international webinar. My talk is on surgery for prolactinoma. What is the current status? It's not any technique of surgery, as Dr. Dilip has explained. It's only a decision making that when one should operate prolactinoma. If you look back at the history of surgery for prolactinoma, surgery was the mainstay of treatment till dopamine was discovered in 1980. Following 1980, everything was treated with medical management, similar to Parkinson's disease. When Parkinson's disease was treated with surgery till Syndopa came, and after Syndopa, everybody was treated with medical management. It's only now when Syndopa failures have started coming, then people have started using DBS, and lesionectomy has again come back. Now, following 1980, medical treatment was preferred. And if I remember as a resident, if a lady came, a 30-year-old lady with a prolactinoma, with a microprolactinoma or a macro, was recently married, who didn't have children, preferred treatment was medical management. A surgery was thought that it can cause hypopituitarism, and this was before the endoscopic and microscopic era. So we were taught that if a young female with reproductive age comes, that he has to be treated with medical management. Now, the objective of this presentation is that whether there is a role of surgery in this microscopic and endoscopic era, and how often we need to treat prolactinoma with surgery, and when to do surgery as a first line of treatment rather than failure of medical management. Now, this doesn't mean that any patient who comes with a prolactinoma, we offer surgery. Any patient that comes with prolactinoma, we first offer medical management. Like this 19-year-old male who came with visual loss, and this was the scan, a huge cellular, paracellular, and supracellular tumor, and this was the MRI, which showed again a huge lesion involving the cellular and paracellular region, but with hemianopia. And when we did a serum prolactin, we did hormone, all the hormones, the prolactin was 39,000. And so we treated this patient with cabergoline per week, and within 2 months, it came down to 3,700. And within 4 months, it came down to 890. And in 4 months, the vision improved, and the size of the tumor also significantly reduced. This is the pre-op scans, and this is the post-op scans. So any patient comes with a suspect with prolactinoma, if the prolactin is high, we first offer medical management. This is what happened in 4 months of treatment. But then medical management is not enough for all cases. There have been many papers or review articles which come in the last 5 years, medical versus surgical management. Articles which are written by endocrinologists, they prefer medical, but then a lot of times, at least 20 to 30% of the time, medical management fails. So we analyzed the cases we operated in from 2010 to 18, out of 452 pituitary tumors which we had operated, 62 were prolactin positive, means either they were histopathologically positive or they had a higher prolactin level. Now we analyzed what are the reasons we opted for surgery in those cases. So the first line of treatment was always medical management, but then whenever there was failure to the medical management, so I'll define what is failure of medical management. Whenever they have intolerance to drugs, or when a patient comes pregnancy with tumor, then I'll give examples how we have decided for surgery. And the cost of treatment also is quite a significant factor in developing countries where cost of medical management also is quite high. And though earlier we were treated that if you are expecting fertility, you should go for medical management, but the present papers promote or conclude that is the reverse. If somebody is expecting fertility, probably surgery is better, endoscopic surgery is better. And what is the recurrence rate with medical management and surgical management? there are many papers of indications of surgical treatment starting from 2015, and this came in 2019, a review article in North American Clinics of North America, where they have analyzed the causes for treatment surgery for prolactinoma. I'll go one by one, the cost effectiveness. Now, which is cost effective, is medical or surgical? Now, surgery, the cost of medical management, if one uses bromocriptine in the first year, is almost $4,000. Whereas if one uses cabergoline, it is $6,000. Maybe in India, it is a little cheaper because medicines are cheaper. But if this is in US or other countries, it's quite expensive. And then every year, the cost of bromocriptine treatment is around $2,600, and cost of cabergoline is almost $5,000. So, but whereas the cost of medical management is cheaper than the surgical management is cheaper. If a patient of diagnosed of prolactinoma at 40 years of age and he lives more than 10 years, then surgery is more cost effective than medical management. This is again another paper which came in 2016, that whenever in a young patient, when they have life expectancy more than 10 years, then surgery is more transmural surgery is more cost effective than medical management. Now, what is the recurrence rate? The recurrence rate, is it more in medical or surgical management? Now, this was a paper which came for pituitary surgery for small prolactinoma as an alternative to medical management. Now, what they analyzed, this is another paper. They did a 10-year follow-up study of treatment with medical and surgical management in women with prolactinoma. If you can see here in this table, the black is the medical management and the white is the surgical management. The patients who had surgical management, they had a better reduction of prolactin level than medical management. Similarly, the dose requirement of dopamine agonist was far less in surgical management. So this tells that the need of recurrence and the need of dopamine significantly comes down with surgery. So the recurrence rate is less with surgery. So if you take a long-term study, probably the incidence of hyperprolactinemia in medical management is almost 64%, whereas following surgery is only 32%. So the recurrence rate in surgery is 32%, whereas in medical management on withdrawal of drug, it is 64%. So it's like 2 times that of surgery in medical management. So surgery is a viable alternative as a first line of treatment in prolactinoma. This is a review article and meta-analysis where they analyzed 50 articles, and what they concluded. They concluded that surgery, if it's done with an experienced surgeon, the outcome depends on the experience as well as the size of tumor. Now, they said that the remission rate varied from 38 to 100% for microadenoma and 6.7 to 100% in macroadenomas. The third reason what we operated was dopamine agonist resistance, and the incidence of resistance to cabergoline is quite high. It's almost 10 to 20%. So 20% of our patient needs surgery if they fail prolactin, bromocriptine or cabergoline therapy. Now, when do we tell that they have failed therapy? What is the definition of failure of medical management? Now, this is a lady who we saw in 33-year-old female, and this is the scans. He came with galacturia and amenorrhea, and this is the size of the tumor. We started on prolactin was high, and we started on cabergoline. But after 3 months, the size actually had increased rather than reduced. Though the prolactin level comes down in the first week, or it comes down in 3 weeks, and consistently it remains if it works, but in 20% it doesn't work. And that level of reduction of prolactin is better with cabergoline than bromocriptine. So most of us use cabergoline. If cabergoline works, it works to normalize the prolactin level in 80% of the time, and 80% of the time there can be tumor reduction, size can be reduced by more than 50%. When one uses bromocriptine, it reduces only approximately 60% normalization of prolactin, and 60% of the time it reduces the tumor size by 50%. But complete disappearance happens in almost 60% in cabergoline and 35% in bromocriptine. but rest 20% do not respond. So what is the criteria of dopamine resistant prolactinoma? Many people have defined in different way, but the definition which is accepted is when one gives 2 milligram of cabergoline per week for 3 months or 15 milligram of bromocriptine per day for 3 months, and if it does not normalize the prolactin, or if the tumor size does not reduce by 50%, or the patient there is no establishment of normal function or normal menses, then it has to be taken as failure of dopamine agonist, and then they have to be offered surgery. The fourth reason why we have operated was cystic prolactinomas. Now, like this patient who were seen in our hospital, this is a 21-year-old female who came with this tumor, and the prolactin level was high, but cystic tumors are known to be resistant to cabergoline. So these are the again indications of the primary treatment offered should be surgery rather than medical management, because the visual recovery will be better if it's operated earlier. Again, cystic tumors with apoplexy, they are again another good indication for doing surgery. Like this, the prolactin was high. You can see here cystic tumor with the fluid level. So which is a cystic tumor with apoplexy. They have to be offered surgery as a primary modality rather than medical management. This has been also published in 2017, where they finally concluded that if it's a cystic prolactinoma with or without apoplexy, then surgery should be the primary mode of treatment. The fifth reason why we operated was dopamine agonist intolerance. Now, resistance is different from intolerance. The incidence of resistance is almost 10 to 20%, but intolerance is almost also similar. Intolerance when they have adverse effect like nausea, postural hypotension, or mental fogginess, and some of them can develop valvular heart disease. And less common are nasal stuffiness, Raynaud's phenomena, constipation, and depression. And the incidence of adverse effect also is not low. It's almost 22% in cabergoline and 43% in bromocriptine. And this is the side effect. And though they accept side effect, but 8% of patients who are on cabergoline and 14% of patients who are on bromocriptine, they cannot tolerate the side effect and they ask to stop the medicines. So resistance is almost 10 to 20%, and intolerance is around 10%. So this 30% of the people, patients of prolactinoma, should be offered offhand as surgery when they either have resistance or they have intolerance. You can see here that the 3% of people who are on cabergoline, they stopped because they developed side effect, and 12% on bromocriptine, they stopped because they had side effect because of cabergoline and bromocriptine in a 24-week trial. So whenever one starts treatment, within 3 months, one has to decide whether they are tolerating or they are resistant or they have developed resistance, then one has to offer them surgery. The sixth indication or reason why we had operated was patients who developed CSF leak. Now, this patient who had come with a large prolactinoma, serum prolactin was very high, and there was destruction of the skull base. This patient presented with just prolactin without any leak, but we started medical management, though, and this was the scan before we started treatment. And one can see here, within 3 months, there is significant reduction of size. But what is the but along with the reduction of size, this patient came with a CSF leak also. So if there is CSF rhinorrhea as a primary modality, or patient develops CSF rhinorrhea with medical management, they become an indication of surgery. But then if the patient shows like a tumor with bone destruction, one has to expect that they'll have CSF leak. So a prolactinoma with bone destruction should be offered surgery as a primary modality rather than medical management. And this is what they published from NIMHANS, Dr. Ari, that if there is a bone destruction in prolactinoma, they have to be offered surgery as the primary modality rather than medical management, failure of medical management, and patient comes with CSF leak and meningitis. The sixth indication is pregnancy and fertility. Though earlier we thought that pregnancy and fertility will be better with medical management, as surgery probably causes damage to the gland and hypopituitarism, but that is not true. This paper came in 2000. 2018, where they analyzed the fertility of transmural surgery with prolactinoma. It's a meta-analysis. Now, what did they find? They found that transmural surgery appeared to improve fertility in women with pituitary microprolactinoma. This is again another paper. So it is not true that surgery causes more damage to the gland, but rather surgery preserves the gland and reduces the prolactin level so that the pregnancy and fertility rate increases. As well as one can avoid the side effect, because people do not know whether bromocriptine or cabergoline has any effect on the pregnancy. So one can stop the medicines with surgery and then they have fertility. So without any fetal abnormality or because we do not know what is the side effect in pregnancy if of these two drugs. There has been no publication on that. The other indication where we operated is in pregnancy. A patient comes with pregnancy. As all of us know that in pregnancy, prolactinomas increase, and 5% of microadenomas and 35% of macroadenoma, they increase in size and they can cause visual disturbance. So if a patient in pregnancy with prolactinoma, probably surgery will be better than offering medical management. So this is the algorithm for prolactinoma in pregnancy. I'll not go into detail because of short of time, but the conclusion is if you have headache and visual disturbance, then probably neurosurgery is better. If it comes after third in the second trimester, one can start reintroduce the bromocriptine, because in first trimester we would have stopped it. But if there is a failure, then one has to go for neurosurgery. But if there is a headache and visual impairment, they do not respond, again surgery is preferred in a macroprolactinoma. So in conclusion, the surgical indication for prolactinoma in microadenomas are resistance or suboptimal response to dopamine agonist with 3 months of therapy, or intolerance of dopamine agonist therapy, or whenever the patient does not prefer to have a long-term therapy for lifelong therapy, and then they have to be offered surgery, and when they cannot afford the bromocriptine also. In macroprolactinoma, if a patient presents with cystic prolactinoma, or if a patient presents with apoplexy, or they develop resistance or suboptimal response to dopamine agonist, they have to be offered surgery. And the other indication is when the there is extensive damage of the sphenoid sinus, as I showed an example, then they have a high chance of CSF leak. Again, they have to be offered surgery as the first option. And in a female patient desiring pregnancy, again, surgery is better because it reduces the risk of pregnancy-induced tumor enlargement and the complications to it. So if a young female with a reproductive age comes planning pregnancy, surgery again is offered, which is a totally contradictory concept which was taught 20 years ago, that surgery is to be done. Surgery has to be avoided. And if a patient in pregnancy comes to mass effect, again, surgery has to be suggested. And whenever diagnosis of prolactinoma is uncertain and tissue diagnosis is required, when you have like a stalk suction effect, then surgery has to be offered. Thank you all for the attention. And I thank Professor Misra again for giving the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Manas, for a nice presentation and well said. And there was one question in the question bank, and that was, does the prolactin level, is it the same in a cystic prolactinoma and a solid prolactinoma, or is there any difference in the prolactin levels?
No, means by definition, anything more than 100 is taken as prolactinoma. So it is similar whether solid or cystic, but it does not go as high as like 30,000, 40,000 like you find in the solid tumors.
Professor
Vernon, I just have a couple of comments to Manas.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Very nice talk, and I know if or your interest, I have heard you before, but I have some difference of opinion. I mean, so I would like to put it. I mean, there are many ways of skinning a cat. Number one, microprolactinoma is a good choice because the cure rate is very high. When you do a microprolactinoma, young person, maybe you take it out and then cure rate is good. And then you avoid the long-term medicines thing. But in a patient who has like a lot of patients, you know, the very high prolactin level with invasive prolactinomas and the large macroprolactinomas, 90% of my patients do go for only medical management. having said that, the size of tumor, I don't think it's significant. There is the reduction of the size of tumor when you see the MRI is definitely you think that it has failed treatment, doesn't bother the patient. And more often than not, the prolactin levels come down when the tumor remains big, which the patient doesn't have any problem at all. These are tumors which are very benign, and the patient remains without any symptoms. So I do not, in fact, many times I counsel, because they're very concerned. They come with the patient, the tumor is still there. Should he go for surgery? I said, no, don't do for surgery, because even if a little bit of high prolactin, if it's not below 25, I still don't push them for surgery. And many of them, the only problem about hyperprolactinoma, to my knowledge, is osteoporosis. Nothing else happens in a male patient. And many of these patients, ladies, and if you have, other than amenorrhea, there is nothing else. I mean, the galactorrhea stops, maybe have a little bit of oligoria, but that's about it. Why more often than not, when you go for invasive prolactinoma and large macroprolactinoma, you still have to continue if it has failed. After reduction, you still have to continue either bromocriptine. Most of the time, we don't give bromocriptine nowadays. We give cabergoline. So the bottom line is, more often than not, except in the apoplexy, cystic prolactinoma producing a problem. Cystic prolactinoma, as per se, without visual compromise, I would still continue to give medical management. Apoplexy and young patient with a microadenoma, there I prefer to go for surgery. But otherwise, more often than not, 90% of my patients should go for medical management.
Yes, I agree with you. Can I answer that?
Yeah, please go ahead. Please comment.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that any patient who comes to us, the first line of treatment, irrespective of size, we give medical management. But as I explained, the cases which have operated, 10 to 20% of the people, they do not respond to dopamine agonist. So it is, then they have resistance, and then 10% have intolerance, postural, they do not tolerate the drug. So those are the patients which we offer them surgery. And then patients who have bone destruction, because they'll come back with CSF leak. So instead of doing surgery later, then we offer them as a primary mode of treatment. Cystic ones.
One bone destruction. It's not that everybody will come back with CSF rhinopharyngite. The number of patients which come back with CSF rhinopharyngite is there. There is a risk.
Yeah.
But you can always operate on that, because the invasive tumor, like the one you showed, the large tumor, you cannot do justice by doing only surgery. I mean, it's a very major, unless until you are doing multi-stage surgery, you are not going to completely. You still have to give some medicines, either bromocriptine, but I say we give more cabergoline. Yeah. Many patients with invasive tumor, with bone destruction, we still manage with medical management without any CSF leak. Yes, they do come back. Some of these patients do come back with CSF leak.
Yeah, the other indication, if the tumor size significantly doesn't come down by more than 50%, one can reduce the dose of bromocriptine post-op, means cabergoline, if we do decompression. That is one advantage. And if somebody doesn't want cabergoline, goes for radiosurgery also, he can reduce the size significantly. So the cost of treatment, medical management comes down if that size doesn't come down to 50%. And if the patient visual recovery is not there at the end of 3 months, though prolactin level comes down, then we have to offer surgery, is it not?
My question is, have you all noticed the issue where initially after the cabergoline, the prolactin starts coming down, and then over a gradual period of time, it starts rising again? This is what we have seen.
Yeah, that is what 10 to 20% they develop resistance to medicine, to the drug. So that is the time where one has to offer surgery. There is no other choice. And the other is when you try to, how long? You have to give for lifelong. And after 2-3 years, when you try to withdraw, again, they have a recurrence. In medical management, 64% of them, they have a recurrence rate of, again, increase it.
What is the upper limit of the dose of cabergoline? What is the upper limit? How much you can...
The recommended 2 milligram per week maximum for 3 months. 2 milligram per week. That's a maximum for 3 months. If it doesn't work, then it is taken as resistance.
I think is there any other question? I think there is a question. Varun, take that question. We have to close.
Yeah.
There is one more question, I think something.
Yeah, one question is from Dr. Datta. Does pre-treatment with cabergoline or bromocriptine make the tumor firm for resection?
Yeah, it makes it firm. So normally we try, if you're planning surgery, we stop the dopamine agonist and then operate after 2 to 3 weeks.
And also, we don't want to give, if you are planning for surgery, don't give for a long time. I mean, it's more than 6 months, they're supposed to have more fibrosis of the tumor. So if you're planning for surgery, the other point I just want to re-emphasize, cystic tumor doesn't necessarily are symptomatic. You can have a cystic tumor if the vision is not compromised. Again, I will say, I have a number of patients with cystic tumors, which we have given a medical management. The cyst doesn't come down dramatically as you see it in the solid tumor. But the patient's prolactin comes down, the vision is normal. We just follow it up and the patients are very happy. The cost is a factor, much more in North America than in India, because in India, the 1 week's treatment is 120 rupees. The cabergoline is 120 rupees per week. So many patients today will be able to afford that. So one has to be very careful about, I think there is a point, and Manas, what you have emphasized, that it is not always, and things have changed. We have to consider some of these patients. But as you rightly said, the first line of management in prolactinoma is probably, and the other thing is side effects. Side effects is always there. Every patient will complain of some, because these are gastric side effects are very common with them. But
postural hypotension also.
Yeah, postural hypotension. I mean, in my practice, that the one which they come back the first follow-up, always a gastric. Every patient has a gastric problem. And you have to, counsel them how to change the habits and where to take and what to take along with that. Postural hypertension, less common, more common in elderly people than in young people, but that is there. So, just have to have a balance, because, we'll be happy to operate. But I think these are patients which are much more, patient would like to continue with medical management, much more if you give a choice.
Yeah, can I just give one comment?
Yeah, please.
Means cabergoline, it's not that many patients are on 1 tablet a week, but I have also many patients who are 1 tablet every day. So that works out. Yeah, that's at work 30,000-40,000 per year. And
patients who are mostly invasive, 30,000, 40,000, you have to give that. And many of these patients we have, when that failed, we have gone for invasive tumor, especially invasive tumor. We have gone for radiation rather than surgery, because clearance of the tumor in an invasive giant tumor is not easy and you still get the higher even after surgery. What happens, what you told rightly, reduces the need of the drugs. That's very important. But we also send for radiation therapy when the patient has failed. That is also, instead of in invasive tumors. I'm talking of invasive tumors. We would send also for not gamma knife, but radiation therapy, because these are very invasive tumors.
Thank you.
The comments by Ketan, Vernon, or anybody, faculty, before we close.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Mishra, for inviting me for this wonderful webinar. The talks were very nice, very informative, and there were a different spectrum of talks. And Ketan, over to you to say something.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for your kind invitation. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all speakers. All had an excellent presentation. And I think the attendees also would be benefited from this talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Vernon. Thank you, Ketan. And I thank you, Manas. Thank you, Dilip. Many thanks to Lucas and Amro. They are still there. Miroslav had to go because he had to go for surgery. Thank you very much. I thank Intas for giving this opportunity. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Nice.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.